You're watching the Fantasy Rankings Report only on Fantasy Now Plus. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Rankings Report. My name is Topher Kurt, but you can call me Topher, and I am here with my co-host Michael Flores. Michael, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Chicagoland is getting pretty cold now, so it kind of sucks. I'm just trying to stay hot like the number one seed in the NFC, Chicago Bears.
Yeah, that's not going to last very long, seeing that the next 2 out of 3 weeks, the Packers and the Bears play. And
Never heard of
this
them.
upcoming week, the Packers are hosting, and they're pretty darn good at home, Lambeau. So I'll take that. And then I will actually be at the game in Chicago.
Oh, jealous. Love it.
My dad has season tickets. He has been on the list for forever and a half. And he finally got him like 3-4 years ago. So I got to go to the Packers Bears game a few years ago at Soldier Field, where Christian Watson scored like 27,000 touchdowns and made all those amazing plays. I was there for that. And so I'm going to go for this one. And this one's
Bears win.
Yeah, no. But it's going to be a very highly contentious game. It's going to be great. I hope I get mugged, all the good stuff. I will be giving all of my valuables to my father because he is a Bears fan. And that's where the mental illness comes from in my family. Hey, Jamie, thanks for being here. Jamie Peroga, as always, folks. Okay, this is the Fantasy Rankings Report, where we compare running back and wide receiver rankings from multiple different fantasy football sources, and we try and take the most reputable ones plus ourselves, the most reputable, and give you the best information possible. Because sometimes you get a wide receiver that's ranked 22 on this website and then 37 on this site, and that makes a difference in, are you going to start them as a flex? Are you going to bench them? What's going on? And so that's where the idea of this show was birthed. I do want to mention that the show is brought to you by Fantasy Now Plus and the Finns Talk Sports Network, and you should subscribe to both channels. The links are in the descriptions, especially Fantasy Now Plus. You should check out our website, do all the things with that. We've got 8 shows a week, so you cannot be bored by that. If you need something to put in your ears to make sure, you don't hear your kids screaming in the other room. I do that when I'm teaching all the time. Just listen to fantasy football podcasts while I'm directing choir. It's very effective. You can also play on Underdog Fantasy through us. You play $5 and get $100 in bonus funds by using the promo code FN+. I actually did a bet the other day that got me $85 in bonus funds. So I got $170, 85 that I could take home with me, 85 in bonus bets. I'm just, throwing a couple bucks here and there. I did have one bonus bet that I threw $20 on. And if George Kittle would have had one more reception, I'd have gotten $450. Oh, and it was a 7-leg parlay. And I had George Kittle for 5 receptions, and he had 4.
Count your days, Kittle.
It was literally just 1 reception. Oh, I was so mad because that wouldn't have been any bonus bets. That would have been straight up cash. And that would be really nice around this time of year, as we all know. We do have our first segment right here, ranking question of the day. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael for that.
Absolutely. So in this segment, Topher and I, we ask each other questions about rankings any way, shape, or form. We can stick to our area of expertise or talk about a different position. I feel like I say this every week, taking it a different route this time around again. This time, I want to keep the Bears-Packers rivalry alive. It's the best in any sport, in my opinion. I think it by far beats any rivalry you can bring up. So this one is very open-ended. I want to hear what you think on who is going to be the guys you have to watch out for in fantasy this week between Bears Packers game and maybe maybe a guy or two that you should probably avoid.
Ooh, interesting. I like this. Somebody to watch for. I might not like myself saying this, but I'm going to double check this before I hurt myself by going against the Packers. But I want to do the right thing and talk about the Bears first. Okay. So, the Green Bay Packers. Oh, okay. We're not as bad as I thought. I thought the Packers were pretty bad at tight ends. But actually, since I've last talked about it, they've been pretty darn good at stopping the tight end position. But the last 3 out of 4 games, the tight end has had 3 or 4 receptions. And so maybe watch for Colston Loveland. Good game. I wouldn't say great game. I wouldn't say great game from a whole lot of tight ends right now, besides handful. So it's not me being a Packers fan.
Or Kittle, apparently, either.
Kittle's an Iowa guy. I am an Iowa guy through and through. TEU. The 44 in my Twitter and stuff is from Dallas Clark, University of Iowa tight end. So, tight end through and through. He just let me down. I think that you need, no matter what, you need to play what's his name? Christian Watson. He's just been too good lately. He's proving to be the wide receiver one that we have dreamed of having on the Packers. He's just doing that. And I think, Jaden Reed might not. He was officially limited in practice today. But he's waiting a final medical clearance. I think if Jaden Reed plays, he could be a sneaky play. I went straight up. I've got him multiple leagues. And it depends on who I have against him. Or who else is on my lineup. I'll put it that way. I also think that one of the running backs could do kind of well. They've given up the 10th least fantasy points to the position, according to Yahoo, but they have given up some bigger receiving games to the running back, even though they haven't done a whole lot, with the rushing. They've not done a whole lot to give big games in the rushing game, but there's been some receiving output that is nice. And if a running back goes off, they kind of go off on them. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on the running game here for both sides, actually. Josh Jacobs, healthy enough to go out there and put in everything. He's going to look great against the Bears. Granted, the Bears were able to stop Barkley last week, but I think that's a one-off. Everyone else throughout the year has been doing very, very well on running it against the Bears. But also, Bears backs look good. Last week was insane. Do I think that's going to happen again this week? Absolutely not. But the Packers are slowly kind of dropping down the list as far as the better rushing defenses out there. Granted, they're still top 10, but they're slowly dropping. At one point, I think they went from 3 to 5. They might be 8 now. So they're still fantastic. But honestly, I like the run game on both sides this week.
Me too. Sorry, I'm eating Oreo if you're not watching because I haven't had dinner yet. And it's 7:13 p.m. CST. Jamie, did you bet an HN TD like I told you? I absolutely did. And then George Kittle shot me in the foot. So there we go. Well, let's go to our steady and safe portion of the show. Did you have anything else? Sorry, I didn't ask you for the
No,
rankings question of the day. I like
no,
that
perfect.
Bears Packers question. What do you think of the real quick quarterbacks? Where are you going with those quarterbacks? If you are in a 1 QB league, are you starting either of them?
Oh, am I starting either of them? I'm going to go with actually no. I'm not going to start either of them if I have, depending on who my backup quarterback option is. I'm not sold on Jordan Love. That's not a bias thing, I think, as a Bears fan. I just don't think Jordan Love is who a lot of people think he is. Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to towards the end of the season, in my opinion, he's a lot better than he is at the beginning of the
Toyota-thon.
season. Toyota-thon.
Toyota-thon.
It's so he can look good. I mean, in a rivalry game, everyone's going to pump it up another notch. But honestly, I honestly think that both Love and Williams are going to have a non-existent fantasy game. They might look good out on the actual field, but fantasy-wise, I'm not a fan of either one this week.
Yeah, especially aren't the Bears getting their some of their secondary back?
Yeah, so Jalen Johnson came back last week. I believe was Gordon also came back, and we did not have. I think we were missing our top 4 linebackers last week. We should be getting at least 1 or 2 back this week.
Yeah. So I know that there's been some injuries there. The Packers give up the 6th fewest fantasy points to the QB position, while Chicago gives up the 8th most points to the QB position. And 2 of their last 3 plays were JJ McCarthy and Mason Rudolph, and they didn't give up much to them. So that does tell you that those 2 kind of bring that down. They also played Tyler Huntley this season.
I don't remember
that. So there have been some very strong games from the quarterback against the Bears. I think that Jordan Love is a better on-field quarterback than a fantasy quarterback. He is not going to blow you away in the statistics, but he doesn't have to because he's a very smart football player.
He's a game manager.
Yeah. Well, I think he's game manager in a positive way, not in a Jimmy Garoppolo way. Yes. Okay. Let's go to our steady and safe portion. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 3 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus agrees on. Let's go and have you start off with this, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. So this might be the first week that I actually am not a fan of any of my 3 steady and safe guys, but consensus loves them this week. So going first, I got RJ Harvey at RB15. Now his range is a little bit bigger on the list, but it's at a 6, which around this time of the year, though, that is pretty accurate on where you're going to be, the 4, 5, 6 range. Now, he is coming off a week where he finished RB2 in PPR leagues. Now, that really was because his 2 touchdowns help, especially that one in overtime. I actually know a couple guys that won this week and solidified their playoff spot because of RJ Harvey.
Dang.
But I don't see that happening this week. Like I said, his 2 touchdowns helped last week. He only had 35 rushing yards and 3 receptions for 27 yards. He was bailed out by his touchdowns. And they have Las Vegas next, who they're about middle of the pack when it comes to the rushing yards allowed. And Vidal went off last week versus them. He put up 126 yards. Patterson put up 54 for them. I just don't see that repeat this week, though. But they have him at RB15, and this is one I'm going to have to disagree on.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know how to feel about RJ Harvey. I just don't. I don't like that. It's icky, as I would tell my students that sound icky. Yes, they're high schoolers, but when they sound bad, I have to treat them like kindergartners, so then they know that I'm not messing around.
You gotta humble them a little bit.
Yes, my first steady and safe player is somebody that I I'm in the same boat. Sometimes I have these guys that I'm like, I don't trust it, but it's Jordan Addison, who's right now wide receiver 37. And so with that wide receiver 37, that's right outside that wide receiver 3 into that flex zone. You might be like, he's got Max Brosmer throwing him the football. That sounds like a Hallmark Channel actor, now starring, Christmas in Cleveland with Max Brosmer and, Lindsay Lohan. But Jordan Addison last week with Brosmer in had 10 targets, 5 receptions, 36 yards. Yes, those are bad. But besides his Green Bay game where he only had 1 target, his last 3 out of 4 weeks, he's had 11, 7, and 10 targets. So even though he might not be producing fantasy-wise, he is out-targeting Justin Jefferson in multiple games this year. I don't know if I would start him right there, but it's somebody to consider. Somebody to consider as steady and safe according to the experts.
Yeah, for sure. My next guy, Jaylen Warren, RB 18, range of 4. It's about as low as you're going to get as far as your range goes around this time of the year. Now, he didn't muster up much on the stat sheet last week against Buffalo, who is allowing the 3rd most rushing yards this year. He got himself a touchdown, which basically accounted for half his points. So he was very dependent on that last week. And Baltimore's next, which he could have a better game than last week because they're doing well, but they're still middle-ish of the pack. But I'm not really counting on it. Now, he has had double digits 8 of 12 games this year, so he is still getting the job done fantasy-wise. But he is going to be very dependent upcoming on touchdowns, in my opinion. He's another guy that if you have to play him, yeah, go for it. But this week, I'm not looking for much of a comeback from last week.
Yeah, I get that. There's very loud dogs outside my window right now. There normally aren't. So
Trying to
that's
call your
fun.
dogs out.
Right. Frank just said, like, I hear you. I might be the size of a loaf of bread, but I'm coming for you. I want to talk about my second. Holy cow. Where did that go? I love this game of where do we find things that we once had in front of us. The next wide receiver that I want to talk about is steady and safe DJ Moore, wide receiver 41. So again, NFC North, kind of this, what has he been doing lately? He hasn't been the epitome of greatness. He did have a breakout game 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh. But then the 3 fantasy weeks around that, he had a total of 35 yards and 3 receptions in 3 weeks. That's not good. Against a difficult Green Bay matchup, that's not somebody that I want to play around with. They've given up the 13th fewest points to the wide receiver position, but since facing Jamar Chase in week 6, they've only given up 1 game of over 75 yards to the wide receiver position and only 1 game of 5 or more receptions. That was to Jameson Williams in week 13 last week. But otherwise, they've been pretty darn good at stopping that. And DJ Moore just isn't consistent enough for me. He's just not, unfortunately. So, yes, he's steady and safe, but he's I like it.
Yeah, he really has been kind of non-existent, which kind of sucks because when you have a guy like Rome, you want to be able to have a second guy you can really throw to. I mean, yeah, Zacchaeus has looked pretty decent some weeks, but
some weeks doesn't cut it.
Exactly. So hopefully this is the week where he puts on a show, but I'm not very convinced of that.
No.
My last guy is going to be Kenneth Walker III. listed at RB19, also has a range of 4. Very, very streaky for fantasy. I'm not kidding. He had 3 games in double-digit points, followed by 5 in single, followed by 3 in double-digit points, fantasy points. I mean, if nothing, he's consistent. It's not necessarily great consistency, but he's consistent. And Seahawks are going up against ATL this week, which should help him get another 10-plus point game. I just really feel like you cannot count on him, especially with Charbonnet out there playing the vulture. Charbonnet has 35 less rushing attempts than Walker, but is outscoring him 8 touchdowns to 4. Like, it is not even close. So I know the consensus really likes Walker this week too, but all 3 of my guys, if I don't have to play them, I'm not really going to look. Maybe if you're struggling to find a flex spot there with some of the last teams going on their bye weeks, but yeah, Kenneth Walker is not my go-to guy, but the consensus has him as steady and safe this week.
Yeah. I mean, Kenneth Walker he's done some nicer things though. He looks like the better back, but he's not getting the touchdowns. And I wouldn't have said that about Kenneth Walker at the beginning of the year. So I've been a big Zach Charcuterie Charbonnet sort of fan this year. My last steady and safe wide receiver that I want to talk about is Alec Pierce. He's right now wide receiver 26 with a range of 3. And the Colts play the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's given up 15th most to the fantasy wide receiver, which isn't crazy. But 2 weeks ago, they did give up 118 yards to Michael Wilson. And then 2 weeks before that, they gave up 136 yards to Nico Collins. And they've given up some 50, 60-yard games otherwise. They've given up 2 passing touchdowns, 2 wide receiver touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. And since week 6, they've given up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that time span. So that could be an opportunity for Alec Pierce to get another touchdown, which he's had the last 2 out of the 3 weeks. He also, since week 6, when he came back after an injury, he has had over 69 yards, 69 or higher in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his 7 games. So he's somebody that is worth a rebound play, worth looking into. I like it against the Jags. They need some spice, they need some juice, as they're kind of struggling as of late against Kansas City and Houston. They're not looking the same Colts that they were at the beginning of the season. Alec Pierce can help light that fire for that team. Good. Got a couple questions from Juan. Who for my wide receiver 2 and 3 flex spot? Got Adams at my wide receiver 1 and Taylor and Jacobs as 1 and 2 running backs. Those are great. Okay, so wide receiver 2 and 3 and flex spot. So let's look at the wide receivers, because we know we have to choose 2 of them. Addison, Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, Quentin Johnson, or Tez Johnson. I start off with Jacoby Myers. I think him and Trevor Lawrence have a connection that is really nice. The last 3 weeks, he has had 64, 50, and 90 yards. He's had 6 targets in each of those games, and he's had 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. That's my first one. What do you think about that?
Yeah, honestly, looking at that, I'm not too sure. I do like Myers, maybe Johnston, but I'm not sure I really trust Addison right now because of the quarterback situation.
Yep.
Deebo is kind of hit or miss. I mean, I think that Commanders-Vikings game is going to be an interesting matchup. Like, you could have a lot of guys going off, but you can have no one going off, really.
Yeah.
So I think either maybe a Myers or Johnston here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking. Johnston has had 2 weeks of 0 points since week 7. He's only had 4 more receptions in 2 games. He's had 3 touchdowns in 6 games. In 2 of those games, he didn't score any fantasy points. He hasn't gotten above 55 receiving yards since week 4. So you're banking on a touchdown with him, and they play Philly. I don't love those banking odds. I'm going right here, Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, who's been a lot more consistent as of late, slowly creeping back up. And now he's not the number 1 wide receiver option because Terry McLaurin's back, which means that he can be more of an elusive option there. And then for the flex, Charbonnet, any of those wide receivers, Jawan Johnson, Zach Ertz.
I would probably avoid Charbonnet. Not necessarily because I don't think he's going to have a good week, but he is very dependent as well on touchdowns right now.
Yeah, he definitely is. He's only had above 55 yards once this season, and he has only had a total of 9 receptions. So you can't bank on that either. I feel like Zach Ertz is my gut call. Yeah, Zach Ertz has had better stats than all of these guys kind of the last few weeks without a touchdown. So that's without the tutty. And I want to remind myself of what Jawan Johnson's been up to, because Jawan's been getting solid targets, but it's been rough because he's on the Saints. Poor guy. But he's consistently getting target. He's getting good yardage most of the time. I lean Zach Ertz there. Thoughts?
Yeah. I'm leaning tight end either way because even on down weeks, Johnson has been performing pretty well in PPR. Yeah. I'm going to assume this is PPR. His down week since week 7 was this past week where he scored 8.9. Otherwise, he's got 12, 10, 12, 19, 10.
Yeah.
I might go Johnson there.
That's not a bad call. Yeah. And Jamie says come back Sunday at Going for 2 Live to ask the same question to see if I give the same answer. That's tricky. I like it. Jamie and I are co-hosts for a show on Sunday mornings, 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. for Going for 2 Live. That's 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So, yeah, that's Jamie doing some good publicity as always. Okay, let's get to the meat of our show, which is experts against experts. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 5 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus disagrees on. We will each talk about one from each tier. For example, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go and lead us on this, Michael.
Yeah, so my first guy that I'm going with in the RB1 tier is Javonte Williams. Now, this isn't going out under a stretch and say play the guy. I mean, he's in the RB1 tier. He's at the borderline, though. He's RB12. His range is anywhere from 6 to 15. So it's a fairly big range considering he's in the RB1 tier. Now, he's coming off a top 15 finish against KC. He did have 3 catches and receiving touchdowns, but he only had 59 rushing yards. He has had about 7 weeks or so where he's either scored 20 points or he's coming really close to it. He was off by maybe a point or 2. And he's facing Detroit next, which Detroit's on a decline right now. And it's interesting to see. They also losing, I believe Arnold is done for the year, if I'm not mistaken. Sirianni Arnold's done for the year.
Yeah.
So that's probably going to open up passing game for teams a little bit more and open up the running game, which, don't get me wrong, Detroit has been pretty much a top 10 rushing defense, but has really struggled the past 3 weeks. They're allowing an average of 131.7 over their rushing yards over the last 3 weeks. Now, Williams was averaging about a rushing touchdown a game over his first 8 weeks. I think he had 8 touchdowns in his first 8 weeks. A couple of those coming off of a couple of those were 2 touchdown games, but he has not rushed one in since. Now that sounds like that could be a problem, but this is a guy that can still score you easily 12 to 15 points in a PPR league at any given week, regardless of whether or not he scores a touchdown. So I'm going to go out there and say he's probably going to still get 15 points this week if he is involved in the passing game. Now he's had a reception in every game this season, and he's had seven of them with multiple receptions. He's averaging about 3.5 targets a game, so that's getting him his points there where he needs it. Now, if he does score, I could see him easily getting to that 20 point mark. He's a guy that, I mean, obviously he's an RB1 here. You're going to play him, but he's a guy that, regardless of Detroit being a solid rush defense right now, you play him. I think he's going to look pretty good versus them.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good call right there. I like it. My wide receiver 1 tier guy that I want to talk about is Puka Nacua, because that feels like a name that should be very, firm in their placement in the top 12. But over the season, Puka Nacua is wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game and a half point. However, over the last 4 weeks, he is wide receiver 14. That has changed. Like that's a big drop. We're going to talk about why, people. So for this season, he has had a target share of 30%. He's had an air yard share of 28% and an end zone target share of 12% on the season. Now, I do want to talk to you about his teammate, Davante Adams, who has had 26% target share, 38% air yards, 10% more than him, 59% end zone target share. And if you watch the Rams any week, you see it. You see it. Davante Adams is on a historical touchdown tear right now. It's very impressive. It won't beat Randy Moss. He had 28, 21, whatever it was. I doubt he beats that, but it's very impressive. Over the past 4 weeks, Puka's target share has gone down by 2%. Nothing crazy. His air yard share has gone from 28 to 25. Davante Adams has gone from 38 to 42. End zone target share is pretty much the same as well. So there's not anything too crazy happening there. But the fantasy points are big time changing, because right now Davante Adams is wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks. A large part of that comes down to the touchdowns that he is getting and Puka is not. This week, they also play the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals right here give up the 12th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Since they're buying week 8, they have only given up, actually, I counted that wrong. They've given up 4 touchdowns in their last 4 weeks. So a touchdown a game. But before that, before their bye, they'd literally given up 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Hunter Renfrow. So their secondary normally is doing a pretty good job in the touchdown category. They are doing a lot of 70, 80-yard receivers to the wide receiver 1, which is where Puka is going to be. But I would not count on him for a touchdown. You haven't been able to count on him for a touchdown recently, unfortunately. Speaking of that, he hasn't had a touchdown since week 10. I know that's 3 weeks, but he's a wide receiver 1. And right now, he's kind of outside of that wide receiver 1 range. He started off the season with 130, 91, 112, and 170 receiving yards. The last 4 weeks, 64, 75, 97, 72. His yardage is going down. He's not getting the touchdowns as often as you would like. His reception total is literally down by 3 receptions per week since the beginning of the season. So even in half point or full point PPR, Puka is not Puka-ing the way you want Puka to Puka. You play him. You're still playing, but you don't hold him in top 5 regard like some of these guys have him.
Yeah, for sure. My RB2 tier guy, Jordan Mason. So he's listed at RB23. He's got a range of 11. He's anywhere between 20 and 31. Now, he's coming off a game where they completely got shut out by the Seahawks. He only had 6 carries, 47 yards, and 24 of those came on one run. So he really wasn't getting all that much of a chance this past week, which rightfully so. But Aaron Jones is injured again.
Oh.
He got injured this last week. It's a new shoulder injury. And Mason might have to be the workhorse this week. Now, I don't know what this means. I don't know if this is a good thing. I don't know if this is a bad thing. I have no idea. But JJ McCarthy is most likely coming back. Is that true? Don't know. They still need to get the clearance on it, it seems like. But like I said, I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly.
You have a head injury, son. No, I don't. Yes,
yeah,
you do.
So what does that mean for him? I'm not really sure. I don't know if that helps him. I don't know if that hurts him. It's just a situation that just kind of sucks all around for Minnesota. And they're facing Washington next, who you don't know which Washington team you're going to get, but they did take Denver to overtime last week, which I was not expecting. And even though they went to overtime, Harvey had those 2 touchdowns. Harvey was the leading rusher against them with 35 yards. Now, are they going to be able to stop Vikings Jordan Mason? Very good chance, I would think so. And if they start putting the numbers up, like you said they got Terry back, and then so if Debo can be that that elusive back, that elusive receiver, that whatever they want to throw him in to do, he's like that Swiss Army knife. It couldn't get out of hand pretty quickly, even though they're both kind of okay teams right now. So Jordan Mason is just kind of a watch guy in the RB2 tier league right now. I'm not very convinced on him, but he has a high ceiling at least. Low floor, high ceiling.
Yeah. I like that. Low floor, high ceiling. And that's kind of what you want out of a running back too. You want a little volatility with it. As long as you have a stellar running back one, like a Devon Achane or something. But that volatility can kind of win you some fantasy playoffs. They can hurdle you into it. So good call. I want to talk about my boy Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers because he is wide receiver. Oh, sorry, I'm already ahead on my research and I'm ready to talk about the stats and I don't have that number right now. He is wide receiver 17 right now. Wide receiver 17. Oh, that is so nice to hear about a Packers wide receiver. Oh, I cannot tell you how nice that is. On the season, Christian Watson is wide receiver 21 in fantasy points per game. I'm running with that. That's awesome. Now, when it comes to fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks, he is at number 16. So again, he's wide receiver 17, 21 on the season, 16 over the past 4 weeks, which is really, really nice. He, on the season, for the games that he's played, because he didn't play at the beginning of the season, overall, on the season, 20% target share, 42% air yards, 29% end zone target share. However, the past 4 weeks, 26% target share went up by 6%. Air yard share, 45% went up by 3. End zone target share, 40% went up by 11. So Christian Watson is now being targeted and utilized in more ways than he was. He has found the end zone 3 times in the past 3 weeks. His target share has literally only gone up over the past 4 weeks from 4 to 5 to 7 to 10. He has had his yardage sometimes is the concern here though, because he's had 3 games below 50 yards. He's had 3 games above 50 yards. Against the Chicago Bears wide receivers, they've given up the 3rd most points to the wide receiver position in fantasy football. Yes, are they getting some of their players back like we alluded to earlier? Absolutely, but they did give up 89 and 62 to Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson in the same game. They let Justin Jefferson get 61 points while being thrown to JJ McCarthy 9. They've let week 9. T. Higgins had 121 yards. Jamar Chase had 111 yards. Andre Yoshivach had 66. They are leaky. They will allow bigger plays, and that's what Christian Watson was initially drafted for. That's why the Packers traded up in the second round to go get him, was for his big play ability. And he's made some spectacular catches over the last few weeks. And Jordan Love and him have a connection. And Jordan Love has been playing that deep ball so sweetly. He's up there with how Drake May is playing the deep ball. Drake May is playing it better, but Jordan Love has played it beautifully. And you get that pair with him and Christian Watson. And if Jaden Reed comes back and you've got him across the middle, well, boom, it could pan out for Watson to have a 100-yard game for the first time this season, which would be wonderful. I wouldn't bet money on it because he hasn't done it, but I'm positive. I'm hopeful about a Packers wide receiver this season that isn't Matthew Golden, and that my hope isn't dead on, because my hope is dead there.
You know what? I don't think I like this segment anymore. But my next guy, I'm sticking with the same game that I worked with on the last tier. That's Chris Rodriguez Jr. He's RB29, range of 22 to 35, so 13. Now, I don't know if you were expecting this. I don't know if really anybody was. I wasn't, that's for sure. I was not expecting Washington to have like a three running backs basically splitting the carries right now, especially this late in the season.
Yeah.
Now, Rodriguez has been the main back as of late, but he's very, very touchdown dependent. His best weeks has been because he has scored. There's only one of his better scoring fantasy point scoring weeks that he did not score was because of it was the highest rushing day he had, and that was against Miami where he rushed for 79 yards. But otherwise, if he's getting a 9-ish points, that's because he scored. So 6 of his 9 points are really coming off of just a touchdown. And it's not like he's really involved in the passing game either. He has 2 targets on the season. And they're facing Minnesota this week, like mentioned in the last tier. And over the past 3 games, they have been allowing 137 rushing yards. So if he's going to have a good game, if he's going to do it against the team, it's really going to be against Minnesota right now. But this is just another guy that I'm really only playing if I have to. So if I have to fit him in my flex spot, sure. And I unfortunately have to in a league.
We've all been there.
Unfortunately, it's happened way more than often this year.
Yup.
But that's the only way that I'm feeling confident with him, is if they're in the red zone on the one, he's in. Otherwise, he's a very, very boom or bust kind of guy.
Yeah, he definitely is. And Jaden Daniels might be back this week, and maybe that throws a wrench in everything. And maybe they finally trust a running back to do more and allow him to do something. And Chris Rodriguez is the guy for that. I think that they trade for or draft a running back next year. Commanders, it's got to be a priority, because that's a little rough, y'all. I have a question for you before I get started on this next one. What do Devonta Smith, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, Rome Odunze, DK Metcalf, and Zay Flowers all have in common?
I have no idea. I don't know. They all have been their fantasy points have been slowly dropping.
Yeah, to the point where over the past 4 weeks, they have less fantasy points per game than my next guy, Adonai Mitchell, the New York Jets. Oh, that is gross. That's disgusting. But it's also the reality of where we are, folks. We are, Stranger Things just came out and their, 5th season of 12 movies that they just shot. And we're in the upside down once again. Adonai Mitchell coming at you at wide receiver 33. Wide receiver 33 on the week. Come on. Who thought this? Who even considered that this would be a thing, let alone a wide receiver on the Jets that's not named Garrett Wilson above wide receiver 50? Yes, Wilson is out, and that's part of why we're here. But we're also partially here because Adonai Mitchell had one good game. Last week had 8 receptions for under 2 yards and a touchdown. The week before, he had 2 receptions for 42 yards. However, over the last 3 weeks, he has had 25 targets. You know what? I'm not going to lie. That's not what I was expecting to see when I was looking at this. 25 targets. Let's see. Where does that put him? Oh, top 10 in the league in wide receiver targets. You know who else has had that much at that same time? Emeka Egbuka. You know who he has more than? Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. The list goes on and on and on. And Adonai Mitchell has had more targets than all of them. It's crazy. He's had one less target over the past 3 weeks than Jackson Smith and Njigba. That is criminal. It is. It is. However, let's be real. Adonai Mitchell could be somebody that you pick up because guess what? According to Fantasy Pros right now, he is rostered, not starting, rostered in 6.5% of leagues. On a team that doesn't know what they're doing with quarterback, knows that their star running back is leaving them in the offseason, could probably end up a commander. Who knows? They're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it sticks. And guess what? Adonai Mitchell might stick. They were very purposeful in getting him in that trade. Yes, Indianapolis was kind of done with him after he had those 2 flubs in 1 week, as most anybody would. But Adonai Mitchell has also proven that he can do some pretty legit stuff. I've been a fan of his. It's not been my favorite thing to watch, but I liked his potential. And maybe they've just needed a throw out the wall kind of scenario for Adonai Mitchell. I think you have to go pick him up. I've picked him up multiple places. Because what if he breaks out? What if he's the fantasy playoff darlings that we've all been talking about? And we always want one of these fantasy playoff darlings. And then we never trust it because it's a team like the Jets. Because who trusts the Jets? No one. The Jets don't even trust the Jets. Go get him, though. Because he could do really well against a Miami Dolphins secondary that, let's face it, let's really face it, has given up the ninth fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver. However, that was more early on in the season because since week 9, they've given up 5 receiving touchdowns to the wide receiver, and they've had a bye in that time. Since week 9. So they've given up 5 in 4 weeks, and they gave up 8 receptions and 93 yards and a touchdown to who? Devon Vele last week. Devon Vele had that. So you're going to tell me Adonai Mitchell can't do that? You're wrong. Adonai Mitchell could continue to do this.
That's crazy. I would love to see a guy like Mitchell be somebody's playoff winner. Like a guy like that being the person that really wins you your league would be amazing. It just pissed everyone off.
You know what? This sounds utterly absurd, and I know it is. But with the way that he is outscoring Emeka Egbuka lately, Emeka Egbuka has not been very startable. And I'm really toying with the idea of in my league that I'm already in the playoffs in, but it plays big determining and seeding. Just throwing Adonai Mitchell instead of Egbuka in there just to see what sticks. Because it could work. It really could. It's gross. It's gross, but it is. Jamie's got to go. Peace out, Girl Scout. Go for it.
Awesome. So RB4's here. I feel like I don't know if I've just been negative this whole episode, but I guess that's
you just gotta.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at this week. My RB4 tier guy, Nick Chubb. RB 48, 43 to 57. It's a range of 14. Now, Woody Marks is the clear RB1 in Houston now. That it is what it is. But Chubb has kind of been taking some of his red zone snaps away from him recently, especially this past week. But his snap count overall has dropped drastically. He was just over getting 50% of the snap counts to start the season to he's at 34% this past week. Oh. And the last 2 weeks before this, he was in the 20s. I believe it was like 26 and 22%. So he is really losing. I don't want to say his job, but I mean, he's basically losing his job here.
Yeah, he is.
Really, at this point, for Nick Chubb, it's really you're hoping he's taking more red zone touches away from Woody and scores a touchdown if you have to play him. But I'm just the Nick Chubb that you once knew, maybe. It's old and gone.
No, I miss the old Nick Chubb. I miss him, but getting older sucks. We all experience it in some way, shape, or form.
I'm never getting old, man.
I'm not doing it. I'm never growing up. I want to talk about somebody that I just referred to in my last section, Devon Vele of the New Orleans Saints, because he's sitting here at wide receiver 48, right at the bottom of this wide receiver 4 tier, and doing some interesting tempting, because over the past 3 weeks, he has had an 88% snap share in that offense since Rashid Shaheed has been gone. And slowly and surely, he's got more targets from 3 to 7 to 8. They came back from their bye week on week 11, and he's had 15 targets in their last 2 games, and he's caught 11 of them. He has had 130 yards and a touchdown on 11 receptions in the past 2 games. That's not too bad for a guy that, looking on Fantasy Pros right here, between weeks 4 and 9 was ranked 100 wide receiver 122 or worse for the 6 weeks. I didn't even know that Fantasy Pros went that low, but they do. Oof. So he plays a Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary that gives up the 11th most fantasy points to the wide receiver. But something you have to consider here is that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all season have been giving up some big games to some no names. They gave up a big game to Kendrick Bourne, 142 yards on that game. They gave up a big game to Rashid Shaheed. Yes, he is a bigger name, but he hasn't done much anything this fantasy season. Given up a big game to Kyle Williams of New England, Mac Hollins of New England, Tyrell Shavers of Buffalo. They've given up some bigger games here to some of the less known guys. And they've given up big games to well-known guys, such as JSN and Puka Nacua and Garrett Wilson. So they're a little leaky. And if Tyler Shuck is finding a number 2 connection with Vele that he wasn't finding with Shaheed, it could work out. He could be somebody that, again, somebody that is not being owned in very many fantasy leagues, and I don't blame anybody that isn't owning him, but he's at a 2.3%. He's at 2.3% roster rate, and over the past 4 weeks, I want to make sure I'm on the right thing. Over the past 4 weeks, actually, it needs to be past 3 weeks because that's when he's gone off. Just like I talked with Adonai Mitchell, Devon Vele has been wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game over the past 3 weeks. So, rostered at 2.3%. He's had more fantasy points over the past 2 weeks than his teammate Chris Olave.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wonder if that's another guy that's all of a sudden going to turn it on and can be someone's playoff savior there. That'd be very interesting. So RB5, RB6 tiers pretty much has been non-existent. So in this spot here, I want to briefly talk about the Chargers. Now, Amarian Hampton was thought to be coming back last week. Obviously, he did not. He has not played since week 5. Reports are coming out saying it looks like he's coming back this week. What does that mean? I don't know.
Don't ask me.
Now, is he going to be the main guy right away? Are they going to ease him in? Is he going to be splitting 50-50 with Vidal? I mean, how they go about it this week can really determine the Vidal owners' next couple weeks for their playoffs. It's an interesting time for him to be coming back for fantasy purposes because Vidal has been very good since he took over since week 6. Yeah. Well, thank you. Since he took over since week 6, he's been an every other week kind of guy. And I literally mean every week. He went 22.8, 7.5, 19.7, 3, 17.8, 3.2, followed by finishing off last week with 20.7. He is the epitome of every other week. So I guess realistically that means he's going to suck it up so Hampton can really go hard this week. But Vidal holders right now need to really pay attention this week because I'm not going to say he's going to be faded out because he's been playing a little too well, but is he going to be a 1A, 1B kind of situation here? Or is this just going to be, hey, it's Hampton's team, Vidal. Thanks for everything you've done. You're RB2 and you're going to be played like one. This is the week where we just have to wait and see. And sorry, Vidal holders, you're just going to have to hope that he's going to get a fair amount of touches.
Yeah, and you also have to kind of watch the news to see how is he playing, or is he going to be held on a snap count, all those things, because this could be really tough for some of you if Vidal could get you into the playoffs, because he might not. He's somebody that you have to watch for the rest of the time. My wide receiver 5 right here is Pat Bryant of the Denver Broncos. At the beginning of the year, wide receiver kind of in a crowded room, drafted in the 3rd round. Very confusing why they took him. But maybe we're starting to see why at the beginning of throughout the season, he's at 7% target share, 10% air yard share, 9% end zone target share. Over the past 4 weeks, however, he's at 15% target share, 20% air yard share, and 0% end zone target share. But Marvin Mims, let's talk about him, because Marvin Mims was supposed to be kind of the number 2 guy coming in. Troy Franklin has taken that over from Cortland Sutton, who's now the number 2. Troy Franklin's the number 1. Yada, yada, yada. Marvin Mims, 10% target share on the season, 16% air yard share, end zone targets 11%. Right now, over the past 4 weeks, Mims has a 3% target share, -1% air yard share. -1. He's only getting the ball thrown to him behind the line. And he has a 0% end zone target share. Pat Bryant, being a rookie, this is when rookies tend to spike up and make a difference. This week, my players are a lot of my players have been full of hope on the up and up right here. Pat Bryant could make some waves here. They play the Las Vegas Raiders. And come on, Raiders, I feel bad for the franchise. I do. They're just not good. They've given up the 7th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and they keep giving up touchdowns. Last time they played Pat Bryant in week 10, Pat Bryant got a not a touchdown, but he caught the ball for 1 catch for 43 yards. So could be a deeper option. Obviously that 1 catch is not going to define everything, but it can give you an insight on things. Somebody just asked, am I crazy for thinking about Vele over Egbuka full PPR week 14? Well, maybe if you heard earlier, I was thinking about the same thing with Adonai Mitchell. I don't trust Vele as much as I trust Mitchell, because Mitchell has to be the option. There isn't another choice. With Vele, he's the 3rd option behind Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. Yes, Vele has outscored Olave the past 2 weeks, but 2 weeks is a very small sample size. I don't know if I necessarily would start him over Egbuka. It's tempting, but you still, I don't like that. My gut doesn't like it. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't been paying attention to Vele enough. I'm honestly pretty much only what you had mentioned today. So for me, it's just by name alone. I was kind of just going to go Egbuka, but I'm not really sure about Vele too much.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Egbuka real quick, and then we'll sign off. Egbuka, since week 5, here's his yardage totals starting in week 6: 24, 58, 35, 115, 40, 32, 42. And he's had 1 touchdown in that span. He had 5 touchdowns in the first 5 weeks of the season, and he had 3 games of 85 or more yards in that time. He has had only 2 games above 50 yards since week 6. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. It's upsetting. But I don't trust Vele enough. Hopefully they figure it out. Especially Bucky's back. Which could make a big old difference here. Is that... I'm going to see if are we making a correlation here? When did Bucky go out? Bucky Irving went out after week 4. So he had a big game week 5, and then week 6, things went downhill. So this could be a correlation that Bucky Irving has been out, and now he's coming back. Bucky and Baker have such a strong connection that could be something that could make a difference in that. So I don't know. Fun finds after an hour-long podcast. Going a little overtime because that is what we do here. Do you have anything for us before we sign off, buddy?
No, just thank you everyone for listening in. Thanks for the questions, and go Bears.
So you can't say that because we can't swear on the podcast or say anything demeaning in supporting a terrorist organization like that. We can't do that. Okay. Somebody just said, great show, guys. Thank you, JRow3829, for being here. We appreciate it for however you are intaking this podcast. Thank you so much. check us out every Wednesday night. It won't be me next Wednesday, though, because I've got a choir concert. But Michael will be here and with a special guest that we haven't figured out. So enjoy that. You all, good luck making the fantasy football playoffs. I will see you on 2 weeks. Michael, we'll see you next week. Deuces. Is that outro video? Why is that not ready? Outro video.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.